pointed to all the integration issues that were already straining, let me say, relations between various ethnic groups. And they said we hadn't even attended to that. These are people who were in the second generation, and we were having assimilation issues with those. And now you open the gates and you say, okay, everybody come in, because I feel sorry for this little girl who's really upset. And the cameras are on me. So people were really angry with her. But again, I still don't think that answers the question, the deeper question, which most Europeans, maybe right now, most people on the left side of this issue don't want to face, which is, it's not the socioeconomics that changes the culture. It is the culture that changes the socioeconomics. This is a conversation ongoing right now in the United States as we speak about inequality and all sorts of racial confrontations. If you come from a culture where young women are pulled out of school, where there is polygamy, where violence against women is taken for granted, just because you cross the border and you get a job is not going to change your attitude to women. So at some point, we have to have that conversation about the...
It seems to me that the left is facing a sequence of contradictions in some sense that haven't been or won't be thought through. So, and I don't want to produce a straw man here at all. So it's a common claim that societies are patriarchal, Western society perhaps in particular, but let's put that aside for a moment, that human society tends to be unfortunately patriarchal. So we could accept that as a claim to begin with. And then we might say, well, that necessitates the proposition that some societies are likely to be more patriarchal than others, whichever society, when we could have a debate about which those societies are. And then the third thing we might conclude is that the more patriarchal a society is, the more the men that belong to it are likely to oppress women. And so then the question would be, how do you rank order societies with regards to their oppressive patriarchal nature? And it seems to me that that's been done even by agencies like the UN, because if you can, it's easy enough to do research on which countries support women's rights most explicitly and implicitly and which don't. And my sense is that, well, there's a handful of countries that always rank at the bottom.
I think the phrase patriarchy is not helpful in the least. You have patriarchal societies that have developed laws and norms and values that protect women and are still patriarchal. So this whole notion that, it's the patriarchy that causes, then what? Then you get into this crazy language of toxic masculinity, and so then all men are bad and evil, and so you have to turn men into what? Women? Something else? I mean, what? These conversations are just sort of, the more you dive into them, the more nihilistic they are, in the sense that then you're going to have men and women on a war footing. Because for feminists to achieve perfect equality with men, you have to diminish men, you have to punish them, you have to brutalize them. That is not what I'm talking about, and it's not what I'm seeking. I believe that you can't socialize boys and men into accepting values that are actually respectful and protective and on equal
Okay, so
footing.
why do you think that? Just let me attack this from a different perspective. I know, for example, the research literature on antisocial behavior, criminal behavior, and it appears that, first of all, antisocial behavior is unbelievably difficult to treat. It looks like it's stable, about as stable as IQ. Across the lifespan. If you're antisocial by the age of 4, there's a strong probability that you'll be antisocial when you're a teenager and young adult, especially if you're male. And there isn't any evidence that I know of in the research literature that anything at all can be done to ameliorate that. The more hard-headed scientists that I've worked with who've concentrated on antisocial behavior basically end up making the claim that either addressing it has to be done at a very early stage of life, perhaps between the ages of 2 and 4 years old, for that minority of men who are males who are aggressive even at that early stage, or you wait till the antisocial males mature out of it, which seems to occur around the age of 27. So what makes you optimistic about the fact, let's assume that the assumptions that you're making are correct, and that this is a cultural issue, and that it's a serious cultural issue, and that it can be associated with particular cultures. What makes you think that it can be ameliorated? Like, what sort of education or training would be necessary to have an effect on that?
The cultures I'm describing do not think in general that it is antisocial or negative in the least to be aggressive as a young male between the ages of 2 to 4 or beyond. That is the main difference between, say, evolved cultures like what we are now, the cultures that have produced the laws we live under in Western society, and say the Islamic Republic of Iran, or the now civil war torn Syria, or Saudi Arabia, or Somalia, where I come from. It's not described as aggression in males is not seen as a bad thing. And the ways of channeling that aggression are very different from the ways that male aggression is channeled in Western societies, and the way young boys are socialized into, becoming less aggressive or
well, they incorporate the successful ones incorporate their aggression. I would say, like they make it pro-social. They don't stop being assertive. They learn how to play games with others.
Yes, and they go to watch a soccer game or football or whatever.
Yeah, or they become competitive economically, or competitive in sports, or they're still striving to win, but not at the expense of someone, maybe.
The cultures I'm describing think that it is totally social and natural and appropriate for males to be aggressive. We come from tribal cultures, and you as a tribe, the only way you can overcome and dominate other tribes is to have the largest number of aggressive males. So that component is not socialized out of them, it's socialized into them. And that is something that we have to acknowledge. So some of these values, some of these cultures are different. I'm not blaming the young men for how they turn out, but I believe that they can be